Hi, my name is Johnny and I'm a painter and illustrator currently living in New York City. I wanted to make this video to document my painting process and explain the different steps I take to create a painting. This is the way I typically work, and I'm not considering it a tutorial necessarily, but if you're a painter or want to start painting and there's something you find interesting or helpful, then that's pretty cool too. I'm working from reference photo today, so I'm going to paint this cute little pansy. And the premise of this painting is pretty simple and straightforward, which is one of the reasons why I figured it would be great for explaining my process. Now, I'm not going to show you the exact photo I'm using just for legal reasons, but this one is close enough. So when looking at my reference, the first thing I do is expand my field of vision, and I mentally step back from the image so that I can figure out which colors I'm going to need in order to create the painting. So in this case, I'm going to use white, cadmium yellow, fuchsia, and the deep indigo color that I've mixed together, and that will be my darkest tone. For the fuchsia and the deep indigo, I'm also going to want to use lighter tones of these colors, so I'll also pre-mix some white paint into these and set that aside on my palette. Okay, so now I have every color set up on my palette that I'll need to make the painting. So again, looking at my reference photo, now I want to figure out tonality. So I need to figure out where my highlights are, where my midtones are, and where the darkest parts of my image are. And once I have all of this information in my head, I'll start picking up different colors and tones off my palette and putting it on my canvas where I see it. I'm working with oil paints today, and whether I'm using oil or acrylic, I like to go back to my palette between pretty much every stroke so that I can achieve those flat, clean strokes of color that I like to layer up on top of each other. You may also have already noticed that I made a few marks on my canvas just with the grease pencil to help guide me compositionally so I know where to land. The shapes and curves in this painting are very important, so these are just simple marks to keep me on track. Now normally I would start with my largest brush and gradually get smaller as I get more detailed, but because I've worked up the ground in a certain way and I want the edges of the pansy to stay clean, I need to be a bit more careful about where I'm putting the paint. So once I get the tones and colors where I need them, I'll actually go back with my largest brush later and simplify certain areas. I want to get the lightest parts in early on, but I'm not using pure white just yet. I know I want to go in at the end with pure white highlights to make it really pop, so for now I'm just using a couple of tones darker than white to represent my lightest areas. I also want to get the yellow in at the beginning, and I'm not going to be modest with the amount of yellow I'm putting down either. After painting for a while, you can notice certain properties about each color, so one thing I've noticed about cadmium yellow is that it tends to get tainted really easily, especially in this case where I'm using yellow so closely with purple. Given the fact that they are complementary colors, they will make brown when mixed, and I definitely want to avoid the colors from getting muddy. It will be much easier to go over the yellow with the deep purple rather than trying to bring a vibrant yellow up from purple. And so I'll just keep jumping around between midtones, highlights, and lowlights, and dropping colors in where I need them until the whole area that is going to be painted has some color on it. Robert Henri, who was an American painter, wrote a book called The Art Spirit, and in it he explains that he liked to set up his palette with every color he was going to use in the painting beforehand. This way, if you like the colors when they're on the palette, you have no excuse for not liking the colors once the painting is finished. It's a pretty straightforward approach, and although I'm using this method with this painting, I don't follow it religiously because sometimes it's fun to mix the paint as you go. But it can be helpful, like if I'm feeling confused about what colors to use or what I should be mixing to attain my lights and darks. For this painting, I've limited myself to just 4 colors, and even with 4 colors you can get a huge range. So sometimes if I have 10 colors on my palette, I can get really overwhelmed. So now that I have pretty much all of my colors blocked in, this is where I'm going to take this ginormous round brush that I have. I'm going to get some color on it, and then I'm going to go over any areas that can be simplified with larger strokes. And as I'm approaching the end of the painting and beginning to use smaller brushes and more of my lighter tones, I want to make sure that all of the strokes I'm making are really precise and clean. These are the ones that count now, that everyone will see, so make them nice. Then I always end with my favorite brush, which is a number 6 script liner brush. I like it because it has really long bristles, so I get the whole length of the bristles really globbed up with wet drippy paint, and then I just drop in my final details of highlights and lowlights. This is when I'll use my pure white like mentioned earlier. I'll also go over the yellow with this brush to keep those strokes crisp and vibrant. Because I already put down that yellow earlier, putting the yellow highlights on top goes on very nicely, but if I tried to do this on top of purple, it would pick up that purple and mix with the yellow and would give me a different look than what I'm going for. These finishing bits are small, but they can really bring the whole painting together and make it feel complete. And then finally, probably the best part is putting glitter on it. So I'm using black glitter, which I'll just sprinkle a bit of on top of the darkest parts, and since the painting is still wet, it'll just stick right to the paint.